In this video for section 6.1, we're going to talk about matrix row operations. When we're solving a system of linear equations using a matrix, what we need to do is put the matrix into something called row echelon form. Row echelon form means that we have ones along the main diagonal, which runs from the upper left corner of the matrix to the lower right corner. All of those numbers are ones. We have zeros below the main diagonal. So you see we have this 0 right here, and then other numbers above the main diagonal and to the right of the vertical line. Those can just be any number. So we're going to talk about how to use this to solve a system later on, but first we're going to talk about what the row operations are that you can use to put a matrix into row echelon form. The first row operation is that you can change two rows. So for example, with this matrix, I could put the row with 0, 1, and 2 into the top row, and I could move the 1, 3, and 5 into the bottom row. So that's just changing the order of rows. The second row operation is that I can multiply an entire row by a non-zero number. So for example, I could multiply this bottom row. I could multiply everything in that row by 2 and get 0, 2, and 4. Now, often when we are using this operation, we're dividing everything by a non-zero number, or you can think of it as multiplying by 1 over that number. So for example, my original matrix here might have had something like this in the bottom row. And what I might have done is that I'm going to divide everything in that row by 2, or I'm going to multiply it by 1/2. Same thing, then I would have gotten this row right here, 0, 1, and 2. The third row operation is a little bit tricky. For this operation, what you're doing is you're multiplying a row by a number and then adding that to another row. So your original row is not changing. What's changing is the row that you're adding to. So we have some symbols for these row operations. The symbol for interchanging two rows is this double arrow, and we use this notation R with the subscript of the row number. So for example, if I want to switch row 1 and row 2, I would write that like this, R1 with the double arrow to R2. If I want to multiply by a number, then I just write that number in front of R with the row number. So multiplying a row by 1/2 would look like this. And if I want to multiply a row by a number and then add that to another row, then that looks like this. So the second row listed after the addition sign, this is the row that changes. So I'm going to multiply a different row by a number and add that to the row that I want to change. And we'll see some examples here that'll make a little bit more sense. So we're going to do example 2 from the textbook. They're giving us this matrix and they're asking us to perform each row operation. So part A is to interchange row 1 and row 2. So all I'm going to do is switch the order of row 1 and row 2. Row 2 is going to become the top row. And row 1 is going to become the second row. Row 3 is not going to change. So I'm just going to copy those numbers. Okay? B is to multiply everything in row 1 by 1/3, or to divide everything in row 1 by 3. So I'm going to do that. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 18 divided by 3 is 6. And negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. And then that also includes the number after the vertical line. 21 divided by 3 is 7. And then the other two rows do not change. So I just copy those numbers. And then the last one, part C, is to multiply row 2 by 2 and add to row 3. So I'm going to write out my instructions here in words. multiply R2 by 2, and add to R3. Now, note that when I do this, R3 is the only row that's changing. I'm not keeping row 2 multiplied by 2. So my answer here, my first 2 rows are not going to change. Only row 3 changes. So I'm going to copy the first 2 rows here because I know they're not changing. 3, 18, negative 12, and 21. And we have 1, 2, negative 3, and 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply row 2. I can either look up here at my original or down here. I'm going to multiply whatever's in row 2 by 2 and add that to row 3. So 2 times 1, add that to negative 2. That's 2 plus negative 2, and that's 0. I'm going to multiply this by 2 and add to row 3. 2 times 2 is 4. Add that to row 3. 4 plus negative 3 is 1. Multiply negative 3 by 2 and add that to 4. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Add that to 4, that's negative 2. And multiply 5 by 2, that's 10. Add that to negative 6. 10 plus negative 6 is 4. So this would be my answer matrix. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 2. Do this in your notes, check your answer, and then move on to the homework.